Hi guys, so I'm going to go over our social studies lesson for today. We're going to cover a few pieces of information about the three regions of colonies that we've been learning about. And then we're also going to go over a colony research project that we're going to be doing starting next week. So let me get this out of the way, and we're going to start with our New England colonies. So if you remember when we looked at the map yesterday and the day before, that the groups of colonies were broken up into three groups, and the one that's farthest north is the New England colonies. So here we have Maine, which is part of Massachusetts, but it's the state that's going to become Maine. So we've got the Massachusetts colony, New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island, Connecticut here. So many of the colonists in New England came over to the Americas for religious freedom. Religious freedom is a thing we've been talking a lot about. Separatists in England are also known as pilgrims. So sometimes you'll see the word separatist used from pilgrims because they separated from the Church of England, and they were often persecuted or punished for the beliefs that they held. The Pilgrims were separate from the Anglican Church. The Puritans also experienced the same treatment of being persecuted or punished. The terrain, remember that word terrain? It means the physical layout of the land. So the terrain and weather in New England made farming difficult for the colonists, and the region had many thick forests and rugged mountains. If you remember when we were learning about Native American tribes, when we were learning about the tribes that lived in the Northeast region, how they had to use all of the resources available to them there in the way that they built homes and cleared all that forest away. This is the same area. And many colonists made a living in that area from selling fish. Specifically, cod is a type of fish. Now let's look at our middle colonies. And here we have New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. And they're just a little bit south from the New England colonies. So similar to the New England colonies, many of these colonists came to the Americas for religious freedom, but also for economic opportunities, which means new ways to make money. And unlike the New England colonies, the middle colonies had lots of different religions and cultures. So the New England colonies, where most people moved there for specifically religious freedom, the middle colonies were a little bit different. There were Quakers, Lutherans, Dutch Calvinists, Mennonites, and other religious groups in the middle colonies. So we talked about religious tolerance on Tuesday, where that was religious tolerance means that you understand that there are different religions around you, and you let someone believe what they want to believe, and you believe what you want to believe without without punishing someone for believing something different than you. And that was something that was very important in the middle colonies. Farming was much easier in the middle colonies than it was in the New England colonies because the terrain was different. So instead of having really, really thick forests, they had some more open landscapes. They had forests, but there were more areas that were open. And also the soil quality in the middle colonies was really good for growing crops. And now we have our southern colonies, and this is the farthest south of our three groups of colonies. There's Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and then Georgia, which is the farthest south. Cash crops, remember we talked about cash crops on Tuesday. Those are crops grown pretty much just for people to sell. So cash crops such as cotton and tobacco played a big role in the southern colonies, and slaves or indentured servants were used as a workforce on the plantation. So the house you see behind you is very typical plantation architecture. They're very large houses. And the person who owned the house lived in the plantation, as well as sometimes slaves and indentured servants worked on the farmland that was there around the plantation. The southern colonists experienced outbreaks of diseases called malaria and yellow fever. These were diseases that people coming from England weren't used to having. And the geography was also really different from the other two groups of colonies. So the New England colonies had really thick forests. The middle colonies had really great, rich farmland. But the southern colonies had tons more water sources. There were wetlands and swampy areas and rivers and bays. So each area was very unique. So that's our overview of what the colonies looked like. I'm going to switch screens really quick and bring you to this one right here. And we're going to look at what we're going to be doing for social studies for the next little while. So we are going to be, whenever it decides to, there it goes, get bigger. I'll let it load before I start yapping at you about it. All right, it's going so slow. Okay, I'll talk while we wait for it. Oh, there it goes. So we are going to be doing a little project where you're going to be researching and then building a colony of your own. So I want you to jump into the position of someone who is making the journey to the Americas to start a colony. So let me read this to you here. It says, "You have made the long and difficult journey across the Atlantic Ocean to the New World and are somewhere on the coast. It is your job to explore the land, record what you see, and to find the best place to build the fort and homes for the settlers that will be arriving next year. You must bring all the information that you can back to England and report to the king and queen. They are very interested in the New World and want to hear all about it. Your first assignment will be to research the animals that live in the area that you have landed. These animals will be used for food, clothing, and the other needs of the colonists. Next, you will meet two Native American tribes that live in the area that you are planning to build your colony. It is important to find out all about your new neighbors and their way of life, how they farm, and what you could trade with them. Your next assignment will be to research and plan the crops that will be planted to feed the colonists and to sell back to England to make money to keep the colony running. Next, you will need to keep a field journal of some of the things that happened to you during your expedition. Last, you will make a map of the land and where your fort and homes will be located. Be sure to include the lakes and rivers nearby your colony as a source of water for the colonists. You are the leader of the expedition, so your decisions determine whether it succeeds or fails. If you remember back to our study of Jamestown, Roanoke, and Plymouth, we learned how easy it was for these colonies to fail, especially when we read about Roanoke and how underprepared they were to live there. So when you're creating your colony, I want you to kind of keep that in your mind, all those things that went wrong for the people who started Roanoke. So like I just said, the first assignment will be to research wildlife. So you are going to be looking at different animals that were around the area that the colonists settled. So let me read this to you here. During your exploration of the area of land, you see many native animals. Research the following animals so that you can give the Queen and King a full report when you return to England. You will need to make detailed drawings and descriptions to complete your research. Make sure to find out what their habitat is, that's where they live, what their diet consists of, how small or large they are, and if they have any special abilities. Don't forget to determine how they could be useful to the colonists. Can the colonists eat them or make clothing out of them for their pelts or of their pelts? If you find any other facts that you think are important or interesting, write those down too. The king and queen love interesting facts about the New World. So because we're doing this digitally, I added pictures of the animals for you. So you are going to be looking at the American beaver, the white-tailed deer, the raccoon, the black bear, and then I left a blank one in case you found another animal that's in that same East Coast region that you thought was interesting. Now, after we research the wildlife, we're going to be researching the farming that happens there. Remember, there wasn't like a Fry's you could go to get your food. You had to farm all of it. And in our study of Roanoke, Jamestown, and Plymouth, we learned that having enough food was one of the main determining factors of if the colony survived or didn't. So the new colonists would be over from England in less than a year. It is your job to figure out which crops will do best in your colony. You will do this by researching different crops and recording your findings. Picking the right crops to plant and the right amount of each is very important to the success of your colony. Be sure to write detailed facts about each one. Next, you will plan how your crops will be planted and where. It is important to remember that some crops are used for food and others are used to make money for the colony. Those cash crops. These cash crops include tobacco, cotton, and indigo. On the next pages, you will research the crops, record your findings, map out your crops, and write your research. So I'll give you different examples of different crops you will be researching. And then the last thing we're going to be doing is mapping out your colony. So I'm going to give you a grid map, and you're going to be planning out how you would build your colony. So before the colonists arrive from England, you must have a plan for constructing the fort to provide protection and the homes inside the fort to provide shelter to the colonists. Below is a list of structures that must be included on your map. Refer to the images of your own research for help drawing them. So I'll have little pieces that you can move around and duplicate to add if you want to add multiple homes or multiple crops and things like that. So we'll do it digitally. But you're going to lay out your colony so that it has the ability to grow food, access to water, that it's safe, all those types of things. It should be pretty fun. And then we're also going to be researching the Native American neighbors that are around your colony. So the land that you have come is not empty, but has been home to native tribes for thousands of years. If your colony is going to succeed in the new world, you need to learn as much as you can about your new neighbors. Each native tribe has their own unique way of life. They have different customs, homes, and languages. Research and record all of the facts that you can about the tribes, their leaders, important people, what they eat, and where they live. Record any other interesting facts that you can find out as well. And you should have some background knowledge on the Native American tribes, especially in the Northeast and Southeast region. We did learn about those before, so your memory should be sparked a little bit when you start to research them. All right. So that is our social studies lesson for today. You will see on your assignments that you are going to have the beginnings of the research. So you'll have these slides here, the researching the wildlife slides. And these will be due on Monday. So they'll be assigned on Thursday. You have Thursday to do it. Actually, I'm going to have them be due on Tuesday. So you'll have Monday and Tuesday or Thursday and Monday to do the research. And then we'll turn them in on Tuesday so that we can begin researching farming in the colonies. All right, guys, I'll see you later. Thank you.